So it looks like Old Man Joe has decided to pause weapons shipments to Israel. Wait, I thought he was a staunch supporter of Israel. Could it be that Joe Biden has finally grown a spine and said, hey, Israel, we told you not to go into Rafah and you still are ignoring us? I mean, why would they listen to you, Joe? You already gave them billions of dollars in weaponry. You paused one weapons shipment. Big deal. But let's see how he defends this decision in a totally unscripted CNN interview.
You have paused, Mr. President, shipments of 2,000-pound U.S. bombs to Israel due to concern that they could be used in any offensive on Rafah.
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah.
You know what this sounds like to me? Sounds like Biden is pretty anti-Semitic, if you ask me. He's not giving the weapons Israel asked for. They need it apparently to defend themselves. I'm being facetious, of course, but one of the concerns of using 2,000-pound bombs in civilian areas is it's indiscriminate. And Israel argues like, hey, we're trying to get at the tunnels, and that's why we use these bombs to begin with. There's currently over 1 million people in Rafah who are told to go there because it would be safe. The United States doesn't want to supply those bombs because they're worried that Israel is going to use it. It's going to cause mass civilian casualties. My question is, why has this line been drawn now? He just gave a speech on Holocaust Remembrance Day on how the pro-Palestinian protesters are anti-Semitic. It seems like to me we can use this same playbook on him because he's not willing to give Israel the weapons they need to defend themselves, apparently. So that's pretty anti-Semitic to me, Biden. You've been a staunch Israeli supporter all your career, but now the slander that you've been using on pro-Palestinian protesters, it can be turned around on you. Already lawmakers in the Republican Party are saying Biden is anti-Semitic apparently and pro-Hamas. So you set the climate, sir.
I've made it clear to Bibi and the War Cabinet, they're not going to get our support if in fact they go in these population centers. We're not walking away from Israel's security. We're walking away from Israel's ability to wage war in those areas.
So it's not over your red line yet?
Not yet.
But we've already sent billions of dollars to them, sir. They already said they have the weapons they need in order to go after Hamas anyway, so I don't know why you're stopping the shipments now. Could it be that the United States doesn't want to be implicated if the ICJ actually finds that they are plausibly committing a genocide? But there is some reconsideration possibly going on in the War Cabinet in Israel and being like, do we really want to go into Rafah? Because if the United States stops giving unconditional support to Israel, they might actually have to deal with the geopolitical enemies such as Iran and Hezbollah, and they're already attacking Hamas, and a lot of these are proxies of Iran, so are they actually going to have to deal with Iran by themselves? I mean, they have nuclear weapons, but they don't want to continue this action if the United States will actually show that they will stop supporting Israel. Even though I do believe Israel is genuinely trying to get rid of Hamas, but at what cost? And are extremists just going to rise up and replace Hamas?
The images that people see out of Gaza are horrific. The UN's talking about, some of these mass graves and the summary executions that there's been evidence of, torture. The images of children, it breaks anyone's heart to look at it. And obviously we've seen that frustration here in the U.S. on college campuses. Do you hear the message of those young Americans?
Do I think Joe Biden genuinely cares what young people think? Yes, because he needs them in order to defeat Donald Trump. So for political reasons, of course he cares. He's just going to be Johnny-come-lately to the party. He's going to be like, oh, well, look, I stopped this one weapons shipment, so now vote for me. Also trying to buy votes through student loan forgiveness, but putting that aside, I think it's disingenuous to say that this isn't going to affect his re-election chances because I think people are not going to forget about this, and there might be geopolitical ramifications later down the line. That's why he's trying to change course at least somewhat.
Absolutely. I hear the message. Look, two things.
Didn't you just call them all anti-Semitic
First of all,
mobs?
there's a legitimate right to free speech and protest. There's a legitimate right to do that, and they have a right to do that. There's not a legitimate right to use hate speech.
Okay, either you're for the First Amendment or you're not. If you want to protest, you should have every right to protest, barring that you're not using direct threats of violence to somebody. I don't think protesting Israel in their war efforts and saying that what they're doing is wrong amounts to hate speech. Criticizing the state of Israel is not hate speech. Me criticizing the United States government, I'm trying to make it better. I'm not against Americans. I am an American. Also, there's been a massive crackdown on Israeli protesters who are protesting Benjamin Netanyahu not taking the hostage deal in order to try to free their family members. I guess they're all Hamas because that's their playbook at this point.
These demonstrations are real. Everybody's sort of forgotten about what happened in Israel. A mother and a daughter being roped together and then kerosene poured and burned to death. Nothing's like that happened in the Jewish community since the Holocaust.
That's why it's completely reasonable that Israel is done with Hamas and they should not stay in power. So we got to call out both sides. I can have concerns on Israel's war effort and do its best to try to prevent civilian casualties. Stop preventing 70% of the aid from getting in. And hopefully Israel is just not trying to push the Palestinians into the Sinai Desert just to push them out and just take the rest of the West Bank and Gaza.
I said to Bibi, don't make the same mistake we made in America. We wanted to get bin Laden, and we'll help you get Sinwar. It made sense to go get bin Laden. It made no sense to try to unify Afghanistan. It made no sense, in my view, to engage in thinking that in Iraq they had a nuclear weapon.
All right, Joe, this is where you lost me a little bit because you voted for both those wars and it's just Johnny come lately. Hey, actually, it didn't make much sense for us to be in a war in Afghanistan for 20 years. We tried to push President Obama to actually pull the troops out, so credit where credit is due. But don't pretend that you were against the Iraq war because you voted in favor of it.
What is happening after Gaza? I've been working with the Arab states. I won't mention them because I don't want to get them in trouble. But 5 leaders in the Arab community who are prepared to help rebuild Gaza, prepared to help transition to a 2-state solution.
I've heard some interesting theories that maybe the Saudi king will step in and provide security in order to try to form a Palestinian state because they are in favor of it. I think one of the best things that they can do after Hamas is gone is lift the blockade. But I do think it's a little bit of a joke, at least at this time, because we've had multiple UN security resolutions that have tried to give the Palestinians recognition as a state, and the United States is the only one voting against it. We have an abstention from the UK, but Japan, all these other countries keep voting for a Palestinian state. So how can you claim, sir, that you care about what the world community thinks and you still stand behind that you are in favor of a 2-state solution? And the UN through this whole saga has just become a little bit of a joke because anything the United States doesn't want will not happen. So why do we even have these other countries that have votes? Because we're not listening to them. We are one of the 5 permanent member states. We can choose whether or not to actually give the Palestinians a state. Because direct negotiations with Israel has not worked. They have said no 6 times to a Palestinian state. That's on them to some extent. But the world community has tried to step in and say, hey, let's give the Palestinians a state. And you choose to use the United States' power to not let that happen.